Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Greg Peterson here, and welcome to the 260th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where 3 days a week we work together educating and inspiring you to become part of your food revolution. Growing plants that thrive in your yard is a lot easier than you think. It starts with saving your own seeds and letting them remember what they already learned. Just text SEEDS to 33444 or visit iwanttosaveseeds.com and you will receive our free webinar about why seeds matter, why saving them is easy, and how to save your own. On today's podcast, we have someone who is working hard to help her community find access to healthy food. We're talking to Amanda Jordan Starks about turning vacant land into urban gardens. Amanda is a third-generation Californian, how cool is that, raised in a small coastal town near the Oregon border. She went to the University of California, San Diego, to pursue a degree in international studies, political science, and obtained her master's degree in social justice. Amanda currently works with Urban Life Ministries and directs its youth outreach and community development activities. Her love for growing food and serving youth came together when she began directing the Urban Life Farms program, which uses vacant land to grow local, healthy produce and provide job skill training to teenagers. Her favorite veggies are radishes and artichokes. Welcome to the show today, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was raised in California. My father actually was a groundskeeper, and he often worked with pesticides. I have early memories of, I have early memories, him coming home from work. We would be excited to hug him. He would say, "No, don't touch me," and he'd kick off his boots and get his clothes in the laundry and take a shower right away, and then we could embrace him. So, wow. Yeah, and when I was younger, I knew that he was using some sort of chemical that was dangerous, but it wasn't until later, while I was pursuing my master's degree, that I started thinking more about pesticides and about organic farming and about agriculture in general.
Your degree is in social justice, and so is there a connection between the pesticides your dad was using when you were a kid and you going into social justice?
Well, when I was pursuing my degree, it was pretty open what I could write about. I had to do a capstone thesis and an internship, and so I pursued an internship in Washington, D.C. with an organization called the Association of Farm Worker Opportunity Programs, and I helped design pesticide and heat safety training for farm workers. Like many people from the United States, even people from California, we're so disconnected from where our food comes from, and all the men and women who work really hard to raise our food and the whole just system. And so as I started doing research about pesticides, we even completed a report about the effects of pesticides on farm worker children who were exposed secondhand to pesticides. I started thinking about my dad and thinking about the different health effects of pesticides and so many people in the working class who are exposed to these chemicals. And I started thinking about the larger picture of agriculture, and I ended up writing my capstone project on how farm workers view their labor rights, especially with regards to pesticides.
Right. Wow. Wow. How did that inform your life moving forward?
So from that, I remember talking with my grandmother, who, when I told her that I was working with farm workers, she said, "What do you know about that? You've never picked a vegetable in your life." And she was right. And so when I was looking at the bigger picture of industrial agriculture in this country, one of the solutions I saw, in addition to continue to be in solidarity with farm workers, was to focus on small-scale local organic farming. And I got an opportunity to help manage a farm in Washington State. Wow. And I was interning there, and then the manager left. And so my friend and I kind of took over for him. And it was such a healing experience for me. I loved coming, working, planting things, growing things. And then I loved, in particular, the community that was built around our small farming operation. And so then later, a former mentor of mine asked that I would come down to San Diego and help with urban life. And so I thought about it for a while, and then I came down, and I've been working here for a few years now.
Wow, how cool is that? You've had an amazing life so far. Do you feel that?
Sometimes I feel very grateful for opportunities I've had. I speak English and Spanish, and some of my most unforgettable conversations with farm workers or different Spanish speakers have been in Spanish. And I think, wow, if I didn't try to learn this language that my grandfather spoke, then I would not have had those experiences.
Yeah.
And so I feel very grateful.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. And I want you to think back to one of those conversations or one of those moments, one of those things that just moved you, and share about that.
I was talking to one of my mom's friends in Crescent City, where I grew up, and she worked in the poinsettia and Easter lily fields there.
Right.
And she was telling me a story about how they had to put a certain pesticide on the flowers there, and the winds came and it blew into her face, and she got really bad rashes on her face, and had to stop working for a little while, had to get medical care. And so I think about that a lot every time I see now around Easter and around Christmas, Easter lilies and poinsettias, and just that I feel lucky that I got to have that conversation with her and just understand her struggle. And at the same time, I feel sad. She was also describing about how both of those flowers are forced to bloom at a time that's not natural for them, just to fit with our holidays. So, yeah. But just to be able to empathize with her and listen to her story and be able to share it, I shared it as a part of my capstone thesis. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, Urban Life Farms, tell us about that.
Urban Life Farms, our vision is to turn vacant lots of land into thriving urban gardens. And the idea came maybe around 2011, 2012, in the neighborhoods where Urban Life works, City Heights and Southeast San Diego. They're not too far from downtown, but they're lower income areas of San Diego. And there are a lot of vacant lots of land. They're not attractive places to come and start new businesses or put in new developments. And so my mentor was looking at how, there's these two problems. There's these empty lots of land and they're eyesores, they're collecting garbage. And then there's also young people who are, taking the bus a couple of hours to wealthy communities to work at McDonald's because there's just not good job opportunities here, or they're not prepared well for jobs as young people. In fact, in Southeast San Diego, where our second farm site is located, youth between the ages of about 16 to 25, there's like a 40% unemployment rate.
Wow.
So the idea came that why don't we try to tackle both of these problems, from a community development perspective and turn lands into urban gardens, and then give young people an opportunity to have a stipend as interns and then also get skills that could help them for future jobs.
Wow. So these are somewhat paid positions for these young people.
Yes.
Wow. How does that work?
Our model is based right now mostly on using CSA subscriptions, so community-supported agriculture subscriptions, to usually in more wealthy communities where they're willing to pay a little bit more per week to support stipends for the youth. So they'll get paid. We have 3 different crews that run during the year, and the students will get paid at the end of the season, just a small stipend. But then it's an internship, and so we focus a lot on classroom time. They get nutrition skills, cooking skills, leadership development skills, community service hours. So it's, it has generated a lot of interest over the last couple of years.
Wow. That is amazing. How do you feel? Touch into your heart for me and tell me how you feel about working on this project.
I think what I'm doing, I feel like lines up perfectly with my values, and that always feels really good. Yes, and I think that youth are underestimated. I've worked with a lot of different types of people, adults, people of different backgrounds, but young people in these neighborhoods, they're really often written off as lazy, as entitled, as, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of the school to prison pipeline, where they basically look at urban youth and they say they will actually plan out the amount of beds to have in prisons based on, how many kids are enrolled in kindergarten in a certain area.
What?
Because, yes.
Seriously?
I'll send you the studies later.
Oh, please.
But,
oh, my God.
Yeah. And so, I work with these youth, and I just think they're so amazing. They're so creative. They are oftentimes stuck in a classroom all day, and they're told to learn a certain way. And then when they get to the farm, they get to shine in a different way. They get to see what it feels like to look back at work that they've completed, a bed that they've weeded or planted, and really look at it and say, hey, I participated in that, or get to eat and take home produce. Thanks to a couple of grants that we have, we're able to, send produce home with the youth as well.
Oh, cool.
And they're teaching their families what does organic really mean,
right.
Things like that. And so I feel really happy. I think that they're really cool. They're the future leaders of their neighborhoods.
Wow. That must fill your heart with joy.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So what kind of impact have the farms had on San Diego?
So from the beginning, we've had partnerships with different communities all over San Diego, communities who are well-resourced and communities who are lower income. And so I feel like the farms themselves, when people walk by and see them, they can see, this used to be an empty lot, and now the teenagers are changing it into a garden. And so they're affecting the neighborhoods where they are. I think that we are a part of a growing urban organic farming movement here in San Diego.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be able to look around and see neighbors in Southeast San Diego, National City, who are also doing urban farming and who are fighting for the same things and finding different ways to collaborate. And then for the communities who don't know what it's like to go without a meal, they're able to come visit the farm, connect and learn from the students, and for the faith community, just really see how resources can be reallocated for a more just system.
Yeah. Wow. So Urban Farm Life has an Urban Life Tables initiative. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Urban Life Tables is a relatively new initiative that started to help our youth who are in high school who work at the farms. Once they become college age, there's still, career development to be had. There's still job opportunities that they need. And so Tables offers college-age students an opportunity to work in the restaurant and catering industry.
Oh.
And so for the first year of its existence, it catered different events, including my wedding. I was so excited to have the students there. Yes.
Oh, cool.
And just help students get their food handler's card, get them ready to work in that industry if they so wanted.
Right.
But more recently, we're starting a new project that really bridges us together, and even in an even deeper way, which is there's a YMCA in City Heights, and the Urban Life Tables initiative is going to take over the cafe and serve coffee and then healthy smoothies. We'll have a little farm stand there. We'll provide produce for the cafe. And then we'll also be starting our third farm site, which will be a rooftop garden at the YMCA.
Cool.
So it'll be a little bit more for educational purposes, but it will also employ youth and give opportunities for youth who attend the YMCA or who are in the neighborhood to learn more about gardening and farming, but with a little bit more of an educational perspective than a production perspective. So we're really excited. That's going to start here this summer.
Yeah. So you're really making the connection from the dirt all the way to the table. Wow. So these interns that come to you, what are they learning?
They are learning, first of all, soft skills just related to having a job. How to show up on time, how to manage your time well, how to work in a team. From the very beginning, we have them do a very formal application process, interview process. We give them feedback after the interview so that even if they don't get hired as an intern, they have those skills for future jobs. We do resume building with them, nutrition, cooking, conflict management, things that they would face in future job situations and just life situations.
Right.
One of the kind of things that always happens, unintentionally, is that each farm crew, each group of students really bonds together just as a family.
Yes.
They often come from different schools. They're kids who may not normally hang out together, but because they have the common goal of the farm and they spend a lot of time together, they often end up becoming good friends with each other. And Urban Life as an organization has different youth programming outside of the farm, so we try to encourage them if they want to participate in those other outside things, and that helps them, create a sense of almost family, a lot of the students have said.
Building community.
Yes.
Wow. So I'm going to go a little bit different direction. So you're looking for vacant land. How do you how do you find these projects that want to have farms growing on them?
Well, our current sites are both plots of land that are adjacent to Presbyterian churches.
Perfect.
And so there was nothing kind of happening in either of the lots for a long time, and so we lease from them and help with the water bills, and and try to form partnerships with the churches themselves. And so for now there's that, and then the YMCA is a new project. So in the future it may not be land that's adjacent to churches, but we found that it's a pretty good partnership.
I'll tell you what, partnering with churches in our communities, we have an amazing the North Phoenix Baptist Church here in the Valley has a wonderful facility, and they are doing a lot of community building. In fact, the biggest, most incredible farmers market happens in their parking lot.
Great!
Twice a week. So they've opened up their doors for community projects, and we do. Urban Farm does multiple events there every year in their space, and they just open this space up. So looking to faith-based communities for resources like land and facilities is an amazing thing. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. So what challenges did you face in starting this program?
I think I wasn't here at its inception, but I participated heavily in our second site, getting up and running in a new neighborhood. And, the first challenge is just soil quality.
Oh, yes.
You're faced with a piece of land that may not have been used for agriculture for decades. The land at our southeast site hosted a charter school for a while, and so sometimes we find children's toys and, things like that as we're digging around. But it was definitely a process of moving rocks, taking out weeds, and then adding amendments, cover crop. And then, we're still, even 2 years later, we're still working on soil quality. But our farm manager, Aaron, really does a great job, and BJ before him, we use broad forks, occasionally rototillers, but we do a lot of
handwork,
double digging, things like that. So it's definitely a lot of work, but it's really paying off. I think it's been really fun to see the lots actually transform.
Yeah. Well, and from somebody who's been growing food for over 40 years, the constant thing that we have to do is pay attention to our soils and build our soils. So, that's not at all surprising. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Sure. So I think one failure, very big challenge, has been with the students. At first, we kind of underestimated how easily they may or may not get along.
Right.
There's different youth that are coming from all different backgrounds, and they could have a certain day before they get to the farm and not have any healthy ways to deal with it, and then that could express itself in different ways. There's been, I remember one time a fight almost started. Another time I had students who I think I was far too lenient with, and I wasn't, strong in the beginning of the season, and it really affected the other students' ability to do well. So a lot of that is just mostly my learning curve and learning how to work with youth, how to manage conflict, my personal views of conflict and how I deal with it, and just getting the personal part of the farm, not underestimating how important that is.
Right.
We joke sometimes that the interns sometimes can affect our productivity in a negative way, versus if you have, competent adults who have a lot of farming experience.
Right.
But the goal of our program is to help prepare them, and so we know that, especially in the beginning, that they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle with working with each other, with learning which thing is a weed and which thing is a plant, or communicating if they're going to be late. But I found that, my personality is I'm a big people pleaser, but I found that if I project at least that I'm very strict in the beginning, then it ends up being better for the whole team.
Exactly.
So.
And that just comes with gray hair. And when I say gray hair, that's not a bad thing. It comes with us getting older and having more experiences.
Yeah.
So what do you consider your biggest success?
I think the biggest success has been what I was speaking to earlier about the sense of community and the sense of support that the students form with each other, that the staff form with the students. And sometimes in our neighborhoods, they can be devoid of safe, positive spaces, especially for young people. And so it's been very rewarding to see young people come together, know that they have a safe space. We have one student now who he worked at the farm a couple of seasons, and he's just finished his first year of college in LA. But, he's back for the summer, and he's hanging out, and he wants to help. He wants to help mentor future students. And for me,
Nice.
we're growing people as much as we're growing food. And that success has come maybe a little bit on our part, but also just the nature of what we're doing and God's influence in it.
Yeah. Beautiful. So do you have one student that just particularly stands out? I know you just shared about one, and this question was preloaded in my head. But is there, when you think about it, is there just one student that it's like, oh my God, that's amazing?
I love to talk about Alex. When he first started at the farm, he was going into his sophomore year, and he was so quiet. He was so shy. He had long dark hair. He wouldn't even talk to the other students. He would barely talk to us. He would do his work, slowly. He'd get it done. But something switched in him at the end of that first season when he thought about working at the farm again. He just started taking more risks. And then we started as Urban Life something called Urban Mic Night, which is an open mic night where where we would do it out on the farm, and the students would plan it and lead it and perform poetry, songs, raps, whatever they had. And Alex just started to emerge as a writer, and he found his voice behind a microphone, and we just saw him grow over the next couple of years, and to the point where he was just performing regularly. He decided he wanted to become an artist and a film director. He ended up becoming a shift supervisor who was really patient with students, especially the more quiet students, and would really, get tasks done. And so I feel really grateful to have been able to see Alex grow on that journey. And he's graduating high school next week, and we're really excited for him.
That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what drives you?
I think I'm somebody who's driven a lot by my convictions. The things that I want my values to line up with the types of things that I'm doing. And food is just the most intimate part of us. Food is something we all have in common, and yet at the same time, we don't all have that in common because, in communities like mine that are a food desert, we don't have the same access as other neighborhoods to good, healthy food. And so I feel really happy that we can provide that. And then also my faith. I'm Christian, and I feel happy to work in an environment, when things are difficult, we can pray, we try to be patient with each other, we know that we're all growing, and just my personal conviction to always be working for social justice in one way or another. And the kids definitely motivate me and drive me, getting to see them succeed. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. If you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be and why?
One book that really influenced me when I was working on my master's was called A Different Mirror by Ronald Takaki. Mm-hmm. And it's a history book, and it's about, it's the history of the United States, but definitely from the perspective of people of color. And there's one chapter in there in particular that I really liked, talking about this one time period in Hawaii when the farm workers from all different ethnicities really got together to push for their demands. They were from different communities, cultures, countries, but they found ways to share life together and to just go together for a common cause. And so I think anybody who's living in the U.S., working in the U.S., who's interested in just a more just system would really enjoy that book.
Wow, cool. What one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
A piece of advice I would have is something that I think that I'm still learning, but definitely have a collaborative spirit. Having worked in the nonprofit world for a while, I think that we can get into a space where we are competing for grants, competing for students, competing for recognition. And I'm sure it's the case in any industry, but I think that especially with something like urban farming, the more we collaborate together, get informed by things like this podcast,
right.
Get to share each other's stories. We know that, hey, I'm not the only one doing this, and other people are struggling as well. And together we can actually change the way that people think about food as more and more people are moving into cities.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Amanda.
Thank you.
How can our listeners find you and learn about urban life?
The best way would be you can always send me an email. My email is amanda@urbanlifesd.org, SD as in San Diego. And then our website is urbanlifesd.org/farms.
Perfect. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/urbanlife. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, Or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.